Austin, great to have you on the show. Hey, where are you calling in from this morning? You back home on the ranch?
I'm not. I'm on the road, Aaron. I'm in Bozeman this morning. Thanks for having me.
Hey, well, that's great. Well, you're on the air in Bozeman right now as well, at 1450 KMMS, so that's great. You got some events in Bozeman today if folks want to meet you and say hello?
I'm actually just kind of doing some private meetings today. I'm going to meet with Farm Bureau. They wanted to visit with me, and I happen to be coming through town, and I thought, this is a little more personable than doing a phone call. So just a couple things like that today.
That's great. Yeah, great organization there, headquartered in Bozeman. Yeah, well, speaking of the Farm Bureau, I'd sure be interested to hear their take on Kamala Harris. As Joe Biden's running mate, she's made it clear that she would use the power of the federal government to try to reduce the consumption of red meat like beef. She's a radical Green New Dealer. So I don't see how that selection does anything to help Democrats here in Montana, but I doubt they're even concerned about trying to. They know they don't have a shot at the presidential level here in Montana anyway.
I think that's true, Aaron. I think it is a concerning pick. Kamala Harris is an extremely radical liberal. We've seen that in her voting record in California. We've seen it in her voting record in the U.S. Senate. I think they're going to have a hard time getting Democrats out to vote here in Montana with a pick like that, frankly.
Yeah, as they should. Well, we've certainly seen some shenanigans at play here in our judicial system in Montana. One of the most frustrating things from my perspective is the fact that you get a liberal judge in Helena deciding so many of these important issues when it comes to state government and elections and things like that, just because of the fact that he sits in Helena. This liberal judge last week basically throw the Green Party candidates off the ballot, even though the Green Party met all the qualifications to be on the ballot. And then on the flip side, you have a Democrat Attorney General candidate who clearly does not meet the basic qualifications to serve as Attorney General, and yet the liberal Supreme Court would not yank him from the ballot. So these liberal judges will pull Green Party candidates off the ballot that meet the qualifications, but they won't pull a Democrat candidate from the ballot who clearly does not meet the qualifications. Your reaction?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I'm glad you brought that up. So I want you listeners to know that this is not a political issue. And just to prove that, I happen to have the Montana Constitution right here in front of me. The qualifications to be Montana Attorney General are set forth in the Constitution. This isn't a statutory whim. This was put in place by the framers of our Constitution in 1972. And I'm in Article 6, Part 6, Section 3, and it's subparagraph 2. It says, any person with the foregoing qualifications is eligible to the office of Attorney General. If an attorney in good standing, admitted to practice law in Montana, who has engaged in the active practice thereof for at least 5 years before the election. That's real simple, Aaron. I mean, you have to be admitted to the bar in Montana, and you have to have practiced in Montana for 5 years. Aaron, I know I'm a product of the public education system in Montana, but my Democrat opponent, Mr. Graybill, has only been practicing law in Montana since 2017. That's only 3 years. I don't care what kind of spin you want to put on that. Again, I'm not sure how that math works out, but I know in my mind that's only 3 years.
Yeah.
The fact is, he's only been out of law school since 2015. He spent 2 years in Washington State. That's a fact. And he's been in Montana since 2017 practicing law for Governor Bullock. So I think this is he clearly does not qualify under the Constitution. What's really frustrating is that yesterday our Montana Supreme Court declined to get involved in that case, which was filed by the state Republican Party. But what's really interesting about that order, Aaron, if you read it, and it's a very brief order, it's only a technical order. The Supreme Court just basically said, well, given the timing, we're not going to get involved in this. They made no ruling on whether Mr. Graybill is qualified or not.
That's interesting. So they punted on that. They punted on the fundamental question because, maybe they'll give the Democrats a pass on this one. They'll help this Democrat candidate out by shoving it to the side. but they didn't want to make a bad ruling saying that whether he was or was not qualified. That's very interesting.
It's very interesting, and what's even more interesting is that this was even a bridge too far for Chief Justice Mike McGrath. He did not sign the order, which I find very interesting for a former Democrat Attorney General and a former Democrat county attorney out of Lewis and Clark County. Even he wouldn't go here and sign this order. So this is an interesting order. And be that as it may, here we are, and that's fine. Mr. Graybill gets to stay on the ballot, and I can campaign and run on the fact that he's an inexperienced young gentleman, and he is. He just doesn't have the resume. He's been practicing law for 3 years.
This Supreme Court punt ruling aside, on the issues, very clear contrast between you and the Democrat candidate for Attorney General here. I mean, aside from the fact that the kid just got out of law school and then spent his time in Seattle, which should raise some questions in itself because maybe he adopted too much of that Seattle mindset, but because your Democrat opponent has not stood up in support of our law enforcement. Amidst all these attacks on law enforcement, he has not spoken out clearly against the defund the police movement, and he's not focusing on the meth epidemic whatsoever. So I mean, his lack of qualifications aside, just on the issues, he's not speaking to Montanans here.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Aaron, and it should be concerning for your listeners and for everybody in Montana. Look, Montana is a state that we support law enforcement. Doesn't matter who I'm talking to on the phone or where I'm going. People are horrified by what they're seeing in Portland and in Seattle and what we saw in Minnesota and a lot of these liberal-controlled cities. And the fact is, my Democrat opponent, and frankly, none of the statewide Democrats have dared stand up and support law enforcement. I think this is staggering. I work with law enforcement every day, Aaron. I'm a county attorney. I'm a county prosecutor. This is what I do for a living. I work with cops. They are fantastic people doing fantastic jobs. They're great professionals, and I absolutely support them. And as Attorney General, I'm going to be an advocate for them. And I'm running on a platform of getting them the resources they need on the front lines to do what they can to combat the meth and violent crime epidemic. I think this is what a chief law enforcement official should do.
I would add one other note, too, talking about your Democrat opponent and his lack of qualifications. It was Democrats themselves who first made that argument back during the Democrat primary. Former State Senator Dave Wanzen right out of Missoula made that argument. And he was right. But, of course, Democrats, I guess the young man who's the Democrat candidate comes from a very wealthy family in Great Falls, so they didn't want to they didn't want to say no to the connected one there on that one. Hey, switching tracks here for a second. I haven't read or heard about this anywhere else. I did see a piece in the Montana Daily Gazette, conservative blog out of eastern Montana, but I saw it on your Facebook page. The governor, Liberal Governor Steve Bullock, has been getting attacked by the NRSC in TV commercials for basically giving state dollars to the company founded by his brother. But apparently, he's also there's research that has shown that the governor has also been giving millions of dollars to the company that his wife works for as well. What did you hear there?
Well, so this is really interesting, Aaron. So we've got a legislative candidate in Helena, and I will profess that I've never met this lady, but her name is Debbie Westlake, and she's been doing a ton of research on the state transparency website. For folks that don't know, you can get on this website, and the idea here, the legislature put this in place. The idea was we're going to publish the state's checkbook, so you can see where your tax dollars are being spent. Now, it's not easy to navigate. It's convoluted and it's kind of messy. But what Ms. Westlake figured out here was she kept seeing this company's name come up over and over and over in these contracts. And just to wrap this up quickly for you here, $6.6 million since 2013 has been awarded to First Lady Lisa Bullock's company. This certainly, I think, raises questions. We hear a lot of allegations coming out of Helena about no-bid contracts being awarded. I think this certainly merits some investigation.
Yeah.
Because this does not pass the smell test.
Well, and hey, it's one of those things. You never want to. I never want to rush to judgment, but you're right. It's something that should be looked at. It's something that if it were a Republican governor, let's be honest, the question would be asked. The media would be all over this thing. And who knows if they'll ever even ask the question or ever even do anything on it, because they've given Bullock a lot of lots of passes on a lot of other things over here in recent years. That's for sure. Republican Attorney General candidate Austin Knudsen, great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for calling in this morning.
You bet. Thanks a lot, Aaron. Always a pleasure.